Winter has finally come, and I'm in the mood to make nourishing meals to keep us warm. This is just going to be me cooking dinners in my kitchen, making warm meals for my family. These are mostly one-dish meals using whole food ingredients. I'll briefly explain how to do everything along the way, and I hope to inspire you to get in your kitchen as well.
Yeah. Take a while
And I sure hope you enjoy.
That's so good.
Now when I'm making dinner, sometimes I follow a recipe, but most often I follow the ingredients. Like tonight, I know that I want to use sausage and sweet potato. So that starts my thought process. But I also know that I have apples and onions and spinach on hand. They're always in my kitchen. So it's just a matter of how to incorporate those things and put it all together. Now this is what I want my final dish to look like. So I'm going to start off by roasting my sweet potatoes. I'm just going to put a little oil and salt and pepper on there, throw them in the oven and roast them at about 425 for about 10 to 15 minutes. I want this to be a sweet and savory meal because that's a flavor combo that my kids really like. So I slice up some apple and some onion, and then I add some fresh herbs, some thyme, some rosemary, and some sage. And I really do think that fresh herbs make a big difference here. After I have everything chopped up, I head over to the stove. I put a little oil in a pan and I add my onions and my apples, with a little pinch of salt and some black pepper, and of course those fresh herbs. And all of this I just need to saute for about 5 to 6 minutes, which will give me enough time to get my sausages ready. So I'm just using an Italian sausage here, and all I'm going to do is slice it open and remove the casing, because that stuff never really digests that well anyway. I'll just pick it apart and add it to my pan. And then I just continue sauteing all of that together. And once my sweet potatoes are done roasting, I'll just take those out and add those to the pan. Then I add just a touch of butter and a little dried oregano. And I'll of course put all of these ingredients in the description below for you. But I just sauteed this for another 2 or 3 minutes, just so all the flavors could come together. Almost, buddy. And at the very end here, I just added a handful of fresh spinach leaves. And I just gave it another 30 seconds to cook, and I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. It met the sweet and savory goal that I had for it quite well. And I also served this up with a little bit of cranberry sauce that I made in the last video, because the kids really liked that. I'll put a link to that in the description below for you as well. And that was our supper for the night. Is that good?
Yeah, it's so good.
Now this next one is a cinnamon coconut milk curry with butternut squash. Now I make some version of curry every once in a while just because it's always warm and delicious. Now tonight I know that I want to use up this leftover butternut squash that I have in my fridge. I peeled and cubed it a couple of days ago and now I just need to use it up. I was thinking about putting it in some chili, but I decided to make curry instead. I also had some leftover cauliflower and about a half of a zucchini. I just quickly dice that up so it's ready to go, as well as an onion. Then I head over to the stove and add a little coconut oil into a pan, get that nice and warm. And the first step is for me to build the base for the curry, so I'm going to put that onion in there so it can start sauteing. Then I'm going to get some cumin seed and some coriander seed. I'm just going to break that down a little bit in my pestle, pour that in there, as well as 3 cloves of crushed garlic and about 1 inch of grated ginger. And then 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. I only put 1 here, but I went back later and added more because it's a key ingredient to this dish. And I just let that flavor build for about 2 minutes or so. Then it's time to add the vegetables. So I put a little oil in there and I add the butternut squash and the cauliflower, as well as a generous pinch of salt and some black pepper. And I just let that saute for about 2 minutes or so. Then I add the zucchini in because the zucchini is soft and just doesn't take as long to cook. And then it's time for the liquid, so I add about a cup of chicken stock and 1 can of coconut milk. You could use whatever variety you like. I'm just going to let that come to a simmer while I get my protein ready. And tonight I chose to use fish. I have some beautiful steelhead here, but any fish would work for this. I just gently slide my knife under the skin to remove that. This part takes a little bit of practice, but you get better over time. Then just cut it into bite-sized pieces, season it with a little salt and some pepper. Then I take it over to the stove and gently slide it into my curry. The fish does not take that long to cook, only about 1.5 minutes. Nice, make sure the fish gets into the broth and it comes back up to a simmer. Then lastly, I just add about a handful of fresh spinach leaves and I just fold those in for about 20 seconds or so. And I was just going to serve it as is, but we had this leftover rice in the fridge, so I might as well go ahead and serve it up next to some rice with my little helper here who was anxious to eat. Now this curry is mild but very flavorful. And I like how it's an easy way to use up some of my leftover vegetables. And the kids loved it. Now the next night I made a squash and cheddar bake with beans, leeks, and mushrooms. Now this one was slightly more involved, but still a lot of fun to make. Now I knew I wanted to use delicate squash because they're in season and they're only like $1 a piece. I also wanted to use some leeks, some mushrooms, some beans, fresh herbs again, and then put it all together with a rich cheddar cheese sauce. So first I cut the squash in half, cored out all the seeds, and you don't have to peel this one because the skin is edible as long as you cook it. And I cut mine into small pieces because I want them bite-sized and I want them to cook quickly. Then onto a sheet tray they go, season it with a little bit of oil, some salt and pepper. Then into the oven to roast at 425 for about 20 minutes. Meanwhile, I slice up my leeks and my mushrooms. And I open up a can of cannellini beans and give them a quick rinse. Then I pick apart some rosemary and dice that up. Grab some fresh stems of thyme, and crush about 4 cloves of garlic. Then into a pan over about medium heat, I put in some oil, then I place in the leeks and the mushrooms and the garlic, and I start to cook all that down. Then I season it with a little salt, that rosemary that I chopped up, a couple stems of thyme, and some black pepper. Next I place in those cannellini beans. And then it's time to start the cheddar sauce. So I'm going to slide this over to the side and get a pot on the heat. And I place in about 2 tablespoons of butter. And once that's melted, I add 2 tablespoons of flour. And I just whisk that away until it's all blended well. Next I whisk in about 1 cup to 1.25 cups of milk, continuously whisking. Then I put in about 1 cup of mild cheddar cheese that I grated, as well as a teaspoon of Dijon mustard to give it a little richness, a little pinch of salt, and I just whisk that away until everything is blended really well and the cheese sauce drizzles off my whisk. Then I grab the squash out of the oven, which was nice and golden now, and I pour that into the pan, and then it was time to put everything together with that rich cheddar cheese sauce. Then I just had to mix everything up well, and this is all going back into the oven, but first I had some croutons that I wanted to put on the top. These were just some frozen pieces of bread that I cut up from an old sourdough loaf. So I just stuck those on there and I drizzled some olive oil, sprinkled some fresh thyme leaves, and some cracked black pepper, as well as a little bit of dried oregano. And lastly, sprinkled just a little extra cheese on top. Then I put it back in the oven for about 5 or 10 minutes, just enough for the cheese to melt and the croutons to start toasting. Now there was no meat in there, although you could put it in if you wanted to. But there was some protein from the beans and the cheese, and it sure was warm, satisfying, and filling. Now if you like the format of this video, let me know in the comments down below. I'll be happy to make some more of these. It's slightly different than my other videos, but I had a lot of fun doing it. All the ingredients, of course, will be down in the description below for you to check out. And thank you so much for watching. Now go cook something delicious for someone you love.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
You like the bite?
Yeah. Take a while to chew, but that's good.